higher ridges of the Palmetto Subrange. It's still quite warm. At least there's a cooler breeze. So I don't need as many rest breaks from the sun anymore. Cercocarpus latifolius starting to appear quite commonly out of the pinyon juniper forest. Lots of dwarf artemisias on these barren slopes. And I'm glad for the easier walking ahead. The ground's so hot that it hurts to sit on it, but eking out a living here. It's a member of the Eriogonum cespitosum group. Not even really 5 centimeters high. And there's a nice patch here. There's one without flowers. I forget what that artemisia is called. It's definitely not tridentata though. Got a couple real pathetic pines and ephedras. I saw a pine about that big just a few meters back. Pretty pathetic Cercocarpus there. But these Eriogonums are thriving. Wouldn't be surprised if it hasn't really rained or snowed up here in a couple months almost now. Unlike, for example, Eriogonum flatum group, these flowers are all clustered into heads. It's hard to see specific individual flowers without a hand lens or getting real up close, but each little yellow flower is 6 tepals. Starting to see why there's so many different Eriogonum species here. Just already noticing that already with a little over 24 hours on foot, close to 30 now. There's species endemic just to this range. Doubt if I'll really see it or notice it or not, but it's under threat of extinction. It's named after the great botanist A. Jerry Team, who's collected thousands upon thousands of plants all across Nevada. And Eriogonum teamii is that species under threat. Could be other narrowly endemic things here. That's a common erigeron, but there's a random Eriogonum. Don't have a grasp on them all yet, unfortunately, so forgive me. I can't tell you the name of that right now, but it's very distinct. It's maybe the 10th species of Eriogonum I've seen so far, maybe 8. I haven't exactly been counting, but there's quite a lot out here already, including our friend Eriogonum inflatum down below, kind of comprising that extension of the Mojave element. Have not seen any of the shrubs yet though. Fasciculatum, for example, in terms of the lower Mojave desert taxa. Have seen Eriogonum umbulatum, which forms subshrubs up here, even locally common in some spots. Have to point it out next time or sometime. I'm sure it's very common across this entire range, since there's nothing rare about that group. There it is. just a few seconds after talking about it without seeing it. It's a big patch of it. A lot of them's not really in flower yet. They get that involucre brax subtending that umbel though. Very distinct. Forming subshrubs as I remarked earlier. Old road making its way up here. Wonder how far it goes up there and how useful it'll be. Always welcome. Find a random road along your route, along your pathway. Not really obsessed with shade anymore like I was earlier today. It's still hot, don't get me wrong. It's past 4 o'clock now though. High enough elevation here with enough breeze that openings are just fine right now. This is the main high ridge of the Palmetto Subrange that I'm basically topped out on. I've already topped out, but there's higher parts ahead, of course. A little slow going with the steepness and the heatness. But guzzling through that water, so pack's getting lighter. Not worried about that at all, because I still have more than enough. Which makes him really just much happier and much less stressed out, and much easier going about things when you don't have to worry about water. Surprised I even slept last night, because if I hadn't seen 3 springs up the canyon where I was sleeping, I would have been very stressed out about water this morning. And a beautiful windswept step it is. Put a road there for me and everything. It's gonna be a mighty fine evening. It's interesting. I was just kind of curious what other tomfolios have been up here recently. Someone from Littleton, Colorado in April. Used to live near there. Now we got someone I know, Corey. I was just up here, 3 weeks ago now, almost? Greg Gerlach, I feel like it's a very familiar name too. Fairly well visited peak by the Californians. Sierra Nevada, hold true to their name. Because those Sierra are Nevada. More so in the foreground, we have a spectacular set of ranges I fully traversed in May of 2018. We got the entirety of the Inyos out there, kind of in the middle ground, hooking into the entirety of the whites. Which all are in California so far until the far northern end of the whites dip into Nevada just a little bit. Both very, very spectacular places and highly recommended for any level of visit. only significant stretch of westward movement of this trip happens to be this evening, so kind of blinded and walking into the sun right now. I'm gonna be burnt no matter what I do. Look at this beaut. Middle of this brutal road. That's where I'll see ya eking it out too. That's how it's done, my friends. You do not need a trail to have a fantastic walk in Nevada. Look at these little darlings. Right, the Subrange is dropping down towards Oasis Divide, where it connects with the greater and larger extent of the range, the core of the range, if you will. Excited about that. Excited about the different microhabitats that the bigger range might have, springs and whatnot. Here's a low wash in between two of the ridges that descend to the divide slash pass, if you want to call it that. Might be an old road I'm picking up right here even. Could be pretty easy. Anyway, yeah, there is a gentle descent ahead. I will almost definitely be camping in this wash, for it is almost sunset. Around solstice time, celebrate the sun. Good time for that. Morning of day 3, traversing Artemisia ephedra plain with pockets of pinyon juniper remaining. Looks a lot lower than we actually are. It's only about 7,000 feet here, but it still, based on the barrenness, looks like it could be 5 or 6. The divide is gradually sloping to where it meets the main range up ahead, so I'm walking more directly across to the next resupply point, which will take me up into that dark band of forested country in the core Silver Peak range. The White Mountains greeting me this morning, all their fineness. And the Sierra as well, further out. A little bit beside myself here, pinyon juniper savanna, sagebrush, above 7,000 feet. And then there's that thing right there. What the heck is going on there? Must be plenty of frost at this elevation in the winter. But there it is. Lone Joshua tree. Around 7,300 feet or so. Might be a couple more in the distance there too. Anyway, that's really weird. Really, really weird. Well, I'll be damned. 'Cause there's a whole spray of them covering that south slope. They don't look too bad a shape either. I don't think it ever hits 100 degrees here, so we got a serious climate disparity in my head going on, where I see them at 3,000-4,000 feet. I see them peaking below 5,000 feet in a lot of places, and here this far north, we've got them thriving on one south face right here. Probably up to 7,500 feet. It must be all about the dryness then. Their temperature range sits on the cooler side compared to Yucca That's always been clear. You would never see a Yucca up here. Yet, these things can tolerate a colder temperature, probably even continuous nights of frost. Certainly no days in the 30s, but nights below freezing, sure. And yet it's so dry here that a lot of other Mojave species and elements are reaching high here, and not least of all the jade trees themselves, I suppose. Pretty crazy. So let this be a lesson that Joshua trees in themselves are not indicators of extreme heat, but rather extreme dryness. And an open desert savanna interface. Silver Peak Range is ahead. There's the subsidiary and eastern arc, and there's the main crest and western arc, and they meet somewhere in the north. Got the northernmost high point of the Inyos, Wacoba Peak, I think it's called. Always mix that up with Winneduma. It's one of those two names. And the Inyos drop off to the north with the Central High Sierra as the backdrop before the Southern White Mountains begin and harbor some of the oldest organisms on the earth right there. Pinus longeva individuals, bristlecone pines, right there in our line of sight. Oldest organisms on planet Earth right now. And they can tolerate, furthermore, these broader regional conditions of summer dry Mediterranean climate. How well defended those cones are. It's a passage to the underworld. See Oasis Divide below us right here. Not seeing much for an oasis, but what'd you expect in a place like this? Anyway, I got a couple gallons there. It's oasis enough for me to get by, to head up into this higher, cooler hills and ridges. I'm done with the Joshua Tree savanna here. Back up in gentle ridge country, no longer in the Palmettos, here in the Silver Peak Range proper. Savanna is retained up here. Although the Joshua trees are becoming fewer and further in between. It's a couple down there, but they're on their way out. Probably 7,500 feet here at least. And it promises to be a pleasant, cool evening. Staying up here in the breeze. The sun goes down. Missed out on the clouds though. That would have been nice. Gotta think about it overnight, but I've got two options here. The ridge actually goes down that way and follows those low hill lines. That's the high point, Piper Peak. Not sure what the ridge system looks like between here and there. If it dips down significantly, I might bail. I believe I'm gonna bail in this valley either way, whether I hit the high point in that one or not, since my car it's actually parked at the base of that thing, and I'm not having the best of time this time with the water and heat situation. It's really getting me down actually. It's quite uncomfortable having to sit in the shade so much and drink so much water that I don't really have and have to constantly worry about water. I believe this is the solution, to just stick to this valley, which means tonight and maybe tomorrow night. It really depends on if it's doable for me to get up there based on water supplies, based on springs, based on GPS battery. The thing is, my two stashes, they're basically side by side at the far northern end of the range. There's a whole lot of low territory I've been noticing in the brief looks at the map between the high country and those stashes. So that means a lot of low, thirsty miles basically without much flowering. I'm really not that interested in that kind of a trip. So this feels good all around to keep it to this broad valley here either way. So right now I'm gonna continue along the ridge towards Piper Peak. Tomorrow morning decide to go up it or to just bail towards the base of that peak and find something new to do. We'll go somewhere cooler and wetter, to be certain, next time. Slightly cloudier today, not cooler though. Definitely confirming my decision to bail. Started the walk downhill from the ridge. My car's a couple valleys over. It should be mostly all kind of flat. Hopefully those clouds remain, because it's definitely going to be hot down there, but who cares at this point? The food will reconstitute in the refrigerator tonight. I can always drink water when I pick up my stashes to whatever content. So the heat won't be that big of a deal. It'll just exacerbate my sores, I'm sure, which haven't gotten better overnight, and which are really bad enough combined with sunburn on my chest. Stupid not to wear a shirt out here. That I couldn't even really sleep last night. It was so uncomfortable. So I just want to get out at this point. Seems like the right decision all around. But it'll be a few miles yet. I'd say I got 4 or 5 miles of walking to get to the car. Maybe when I hit the roads, I'll just leave the pack down and basically jog up to the car. This would have been a great trip for late May, early June. It wasn't going to work out. You shouldn't be in the pinyon juniper forest in June through August if you can help it. At least you shouldn't be spending most of your time there. You know, I've done some pretty long traverses, the rubies for example. I had to dip down into the PJ zone just to hit a pass to pick up a supply spot. And whatever, that's not a big deal. You dip down and ascend right up again. So you're not stuck in the heat, you're not locked in the heat like I've been feeling on this trip. And it's just sapped all my energy and my appetite. It makes the food less palatable to begin with. Hot cheese. I have no appetite for that shit right now. From what I'm carrying now, it's probably down to a gallon. And by the time I get to the car, it'll be half that at least. There's no way in hell I would have had enough water to complete the whole high ridge. Would have had to drop down, find some springs. Just would have been very time consuming and not what I'd consider to be enjoyable. Trees have disappeared again for the rest of this short few miles walk. Not terrible since not really strenuously walking uphill at all. That's when the heat will really get to you. So it's fine. I'm done though. The compounding factors of this trip have, well, compounded against me. You gotta know when to leave. Get ready for the brimstone. Getting blisters on the ice. The power of the spirit was the final sacrifice. Get ready for the brimstone. Getting blisters on the ice. The power of the spirit was the final sacrifice.